Hi, everybody. This is Razan, and I am going to be summarizing Chapter 32, Social Interdependence Theory, and the Design of High-Quality Learning Activities. So the first thing we're going to talk about is a little bit of overview. In the book, Johnson & Johnson kind of classify instructional design in two ways, forward and backward instruction. And forward instruction, as it implies, moves forward. So you determine the current state and needs, you figure out what the outcomes are, and then you structure everything based on those outcomes. Backwards instruction is literally the same thing, but backwards. So you identify the desires that you want. You identify the evidence of successful instruction for the same types of outcomes. And then you plan your structure of learning experience based on that evidence. So there are some shortcomings in the frontward backwards design. Obviously, there's no guidelines, and that's based on a lot of research. There's no guidelines for the basic instructional design model that allows instructors to create any kind of interactive, active learning, which is the main point of the social interdependence theory. Also, there are very few criteria that are given for effective active learning activities, and there are no guidelines on how to alter the types of activities that you're already using and that you favor to certain activities that maybe you're not used to. And so those are the shortcomings that they try to address in this chapter. As an overview, they also talk about what a well-designed lesson is. Typically, a well-designed lesson requires a theoretical foundation, which is why they came up with these two foundations or theories, the social interdependence theory, as well as another one that I'll talk about briefly. But they identified that well-designed lessons have active learners, promote student engagement, and have criteria-based assessments. And the structure process outcome theory is actually the less active learner dependent. The structure determines the process, which then determines the outcome. It's directly related to instructional design, but the assessments are focused on the nature of the process, not on the outcomes themselves. So when we look at what a well-designed lesson is, it includes active learners and student engagement. There are types of active learning and student engagement that the authors have found. Cooperative learning, which splits into formal, informal, and cooperative based, team-based learning, collaborative learning, peer-assisted learning, and problem-based learning. Those are the five basic types of active learning. Cooperative learning splits up into three, like I said, and formal is kind of a classroom style. Informal is maybe preparing students to be in the classroom, and then cooperative based is kind of a long-term, kind of what you would identify with a study group, but maybe a little bit longer term. The behavioral, cognitive, and emotional engagements that are in the types of engagements that Johnson & Johnson found, those all are involved in active learning. So you want to make sure students are going to class, that they're putting in the effort to understand, and that they have positive interactions and reactions, both to students, instructors, as well as the material itself. So the social interdependence theory is a theory that bases its entire concept on working together and having multiple ways of interacting with the learners, the students, the material, so that the learners themselves can create these neuron pathways that are connected to the activity that they perform. There are two types of interdependence, the positive and the negative. The positive involves reaching goals when everybody else reaches them, and the negative is kind of a competitive type of learning environment. The five essential aspects or elements to structuring learning and social interdependence theory are as listed. And when you combine all of these together, you can come up with a template, which Johnson & Johnson actually created for us, to create instructional design based on these five aspects: positive interdependence, individual accountability, etc. So this template is found in our book, and it is a good way for you to break down the different tasks and criteria for the lesson that you are planning, as well as breaking down the different types of responses and interactivity that will be happening in your lesson. And the book goes into more detail, but it helps you to kind of break down what each individual will be accountable for, the types of positive interdependence, so interacting with students and having the positive emotional engagement, and also the types of social skills that you expect your students to have. And you can even have some small group processing where you identify what each group is going to be creating or learning. And also whole class processing, which is maybe something you might incorporate towards the end of your class. So I did create a response to the application 32.2, and I won't go into too much detail, but I will show you what it looks like. And in this application, it asks you to talk about a specific conference that you will go to and kind of outline what steps you would need to take in order to achieve the learning objectives that you've set for yourself. And so I kind of outlined it for you. This is also linked in the slides, but it gives you a little idea of what I would do. This is actually a conference that we, as radiologic technologists, can attend. I was not able to attend this year, but one of my colleagues is, and I'm very excited to hear what they have to say. So going back to the slides, that's it. This is pretty much a very, very basic overview. There is a lot of details in this chapter, lots of information, very interesting information, but this is just a pretty good overview of what to expect when reading. I actually enjoyed reading it. Since I don't have very much background in learning theories, this is, again, something that I'm really interested in understanding, so it was really interesting for me to read. So thank you for listening, and I hope I helped somehow.